I made an iceberg for every single music genre. Yes, everything from your favorite genre to whatever the hell symphonic death metal is. For those who don't know, an iceberg is essentially just a large floating mass of ice detached from a glacier. That can't be right. An iceberg is essentially just a chart that organizes information about a topic based on how well known that information is. So in this case, with a music genre, more established mainstream artists would be listed at the tip of the iceberg, while lesser known, more underground artists would be deep below the surface. Now, I have to admit something. I haven't even listened to some of these genres. Actually, I probably haven't listened to like 90% of them, but in spite of that, I'm still fairly confident that all 5,996 of these icebergs are at least somewhat accurate. Asterisk. This all started when you guys asked me to make an iceberg for the funk genre. And I'm not gonna lie, even though I consider myself fairly knowledgeable about that genre, it's still a lot of pressure, I feel like. You know, everybody has different taste in music, so nobody's ever gonna 100% agree on how the iceberg is organized. There's always gonna be somebody asking, why didn't you include this person in the iceberg? Or why did you include this person? There's just no way to make everybody happy because it's just impossible to make a completely unbiased iceberg for a music genre. Or is it? In essence, we just need to put more popular artists at the top and less popular artists at the bottom. And luckily, there are actually a few ways we can measure popularity objectively. We could look at their follower count, their monthly listeners, streams, any of those would work, but none of them would really work on their own, right? I mean, think about it. Doja Cat has more monthly listeners than Michael Jackson, but would you say that she's more well-known or belongs higher up on the pop iceberg? Probably not. Ideally, we would have some sort of average of these stats so that we can rank each artist by overall popularity and not just recent popularity. So I broke out the calculator, opened up Spotify, and calculated an average popularity score for every single funk artist I could think of. No, of course I didn't do that. Why would I do that to myself? Why would I do that to myself when someone else has already done it for me? This is everynoise.com. It was started by a data alchemist at Spotify named Glenn McDonald, and it essentially just maps out every music genre on Spotify. At the top, you've got more electronic genres like techno and house, and as you go down, the genres get more acoustic and organic. Genres on the left are more atmospheric, while genres on the right are more dynamic and bouncy. And if you click this little arrow next to one of the genres, you'll actually see a map of artists that have been algorithmically selected by Spotify to represent that genre. These algorithms are so fine-tuned that sometimes they even do a better job of representing a genre than Spotify's own playlist editors. But that's a topic for a whole other video that I may or may not have already made. So great, now we've got this map of artists that Spotify associates with the genre, which is great because now we at least have a rough idea of who we should try to include in the iceberg. But we still need to figure out what order they go in. We essentially need to put all of these artists into a list sorted by popularity. So what we're gonna do is click here, which puts all of the artists into a list sorted by popularity. You'll notice that they're not sorted by follower count or monthly listeners, but some sort of average, which if you remember is exactly what we want. In theory, this list should give us a pretty good idea of each artist's overall popularity. Now, there are some pretty obvious caveats to this that I'll touch on later, but for now, this is a pretty decent starting point. When I discovered that you could sort artists like this for every genre on the website, I thought to myself, why stop here? Why not create an unbiased iceberg for every music genre on Spotify? But that was before I realized just how miserable of a task that would be. I mean, just typing out the names of every artist on this page alone took me almost 8 minutes. So doing this for all 6,000 genres would take me like well over a month. But fortunately for me, we live in the era of automation. It's killing jobs, it's killing art, and by the time I was done, so help me God, iceberg charts would be dead too. I realized that the only feasible way I was gonna do this is by writing a program that would just do it all for me. Simple enough, right? Little did I know that that would be just as miserable as doing it manually. You see, I don't know how to code. I mean, I can make like a basic website that looks pretty, but I didn't exactly have experience creating iceberg generators from scratch. So I did what all good computer programmers do, and I used someone else's code. Now that's obviously oversimplifying a bit because it's not like there's a YouTube tutorial out there called how to write a program that uses everynoise.com to automatically generate iceberg charts for every music genre on Spotify. So I essentially just had to piece together different YouTube tutorials and forum posts until I finally had something that roughly did what I needed it to do. So miraculously, after about a week of fiddling around with a bunch of code that I didn't fully understand, to say the least, I had finally done what I set shit. I had finally done what I set out to do. I had written a program that goes through every genre on the website, grabs up to 120 artists from each genre, sorts them into 6 tiers by popularity, and writes their names on this nifty little template. Now it was time to put these icebergs to the test. After all, I'm not exactly an expert on Scottish fiddle music, so the only way to truly test the accuracy of these icebergs would be to show them to people who actually listen to these genres. All I had to do was find a place where I could get some respectful, constructive criticism. That's right, I went undercover as the average Reddit enjoyer. Sports Car Calhoun, to be exact. After doing some research, I picked out a handful of genre-specific subreddits and got to work. Well, the first thing I did was crop out the footnote saying it was made by a bot. Then I realized that I couldn't actually post in most of these subreddits because I didn't have enough karma. And I couldn't earn any karma unless I made posts. So, good system. Then finally, I managed to post one of the icebergs into a subreddit that didn't have a karma requirement, r/dubstep, where it was promptly torn apart in the comments before getting deleted by moderators 15 minutes later. So, with 0 karma to my name and a small hit to the bot's ego, I decided to move on to the next subreddit that would actually let me make a post. Though in retrospect, I honestly wish they hadn't. The K-Poppers subreddit is where I discovered that luckily it's not possible to have negative karma on Reddit. Now this iceberg might not have received quite as much negative backlash as some of the icebergs, but like the dubstep one, almost all of the feedback that it did get was negative. One of these people asked if the iceberg was based on popularity, so I answered them, which I guess was a mistake. When it comes to K-pop stans, do not speak, even if spoken to. So I was right back where I started with 0 karma and 0 subreddits that would take me in. Well, there was one, but considering how niche the genre was, I figured the odds of them actually liking the iceberg were slim to none. But r/breakcore, you proved me wrong. I don't know if I've ever listened to breakcore, at least not intentionally, but I don't know, it just seemed like the kind of genre that would have a really pretentious subreddit, if that makes sense. Well, either I was wrong or the bot just did a kick-ass job, because the response to this one was actually really positive. It was actually kind of a similar story with the hyperpop subreddit too. Like, don't get me wrong, there was definitely some vocal disagreement in the comments, but overall, the results definitely weren't as bad as I expected. Which brings us to the funk subreddit, a place dedicated to the genre that I actually do consider myself somewhat knowledgeable on. So of course, I knew from the beginning that this iceberg was a little bit off, but I was definitely curious to see if other people felt the same way. And they did. Loudly. This one ended up getting so many comments that I truly think we got every different type of response possible. We obviously had the people who wanted someone removed or wanted someone added. We had some people who were actually thankful for having new recommendations. And we of course had the old heads telling us to respect our elders. But that one was kind of a given, wasn't it? But it wasn't until this got shared on Twitter that things really started to heat up. This goofy little picture of an iceberg was getting passed around so much that even the 2 biggest artists on the list decided to weigh in. And unsurprisingly, it wasn't pretty. People seemed to take this one very seriously. What's insane to me though is that despite getting so much backlash on and off Reddit, the funk iceberg still had the most upvotes and the second highest upvote percentage of all the icebergs that I posted on Reddit. So, what do we make of all this? If we made these icebergs using objective, unbiased data from Spotify, why were some of them so controversial? Well, I think one of the most obvious problems with an iceberg generator like this is that it can only show up to 120 artists. So for genres like dubstep and K-pop, where there are hundreds of artists that could be considered mainstream, even artists at the bottom of the iceberg are gonna be pretty well known, which kind of defeats the purpose. There's also the fact that we're only using data from Spotify, which can completely skew the results for genres that are popular on other platforms. So for example, funk is a genre that is deeply rooted in SoundCloud, and a lot of very prominent artists don't even have a presence on Spotify, so I wasn't surprised to see that there were some pretty big names missing from the iceberg. And it was kind of the same thing with the K-pop iceberg too. After all, the #1 streaming service in Korea is Melon, so by only using data from Spotify, we were completely ignoring millions of K-pop fans, which in theory actually doesn't sound too bad. And of course, since I'm obviously not the best coder in the world, the bot definitely has some quirks, I guess you could say. Like for example, it completely freaks out when you give it an artist name with a special character in it. Looking at you, Studio. The bot also doesn't filter out duplicates, so if an artist has 2 different Spotify profiles that are both reasonably popular, it'll just put both of them on the list. Which is hilarious when they end up right next to each other, and even more hilarious when they don't. I thought that that might tip some people off, but if there's one thing I've learned from this, it's that most people just don't know how to read. But regardless, clearly some of these icebergs have some pretty serious flaws, so that begs the question, what good are they? Well, let's not forget who music icebergs are for. They aren't made for the die-hard fans who are intimately familiar with the genre. They're made for the normies. They're made for the people who might only be familiar with a handful of artists at the tip of the iceberg and maybe want to do a deep dive and discover some new artists. So yeah, with 120 artists to worry about, obviously the bot is bound to get some wrong. But even if, let's say, 40 of the artists on the iceberg don't even belong on the list at all, that's still 80 new artists being recommended to somebody who doesn't know anything about the genre and probably wouldn't know where to start. And for people who do consider themselves more knowledgeable about a genre, these automatically generated icebergs are definitely a great starting point if you want to make your own iceberg. Adding, removing, and rearranging people on a pre-made list is a lot easier than just coming up with a giant list from scratch. To put that theory to the test, I actually had a bunch of people from the funk community fill out this form, which helped us reshape the funk iceberg into what I think is a much more accurate version of itself. And no, I'm not just saying that because I moved up a tier, but that is pretty based. So while these icebergs are definitely far from perfect, I still think they're reasonably useful. If you want to get your hands on the iceberg for your favorite genre, or any genre for that matter, they're all available for download on my Patreon, where you can support the channel and get access to some cool behind the scenes stuff. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe, join the Discord if you want to stay in touch. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.